Suzanne Pillins from Step Out in Faith Ministries, and today we are going to be speaking obedience to whom? Obedience to self, where you do what you think you should do and then obey your decisions and do that. Well, I think that way you will have very, very limited results. Obedience to the state. Yes. But where do you draw the line? There is a line to be drawn sometimes. You have to obey the state, but if they tell you to do something wrong, then you don't. Or God. When we are obedient to what God says daily in our everyday lives, He lifts our lives up to a new dimension of living. Obedience is the key, and obedience is definitely the key in our ministry. Now, the first orphanage that we opened up was in Kenya in late 2000, Bala Orphanage. I saw these orphans sleeping in a little mud hut on an uneven floor in their clothing, body to body. They were full of ringworm. Well, I got some purple violet from the chemist and I treated all their ringworm and that disappeared quite quickly. But I went home, I thought, we've got to do something. We cannot let children live like this. So we raised money to build 2 dormitories, one for the girls, one for the boys. I then went out on another trip. The dormitories are now built, and we were to do the opening of the dormitories. And I looked at the number of children, and I looked at the size of those dormitories, and I thought, how are we going to fit all those orphans in this dormitory in beds? They've been sleeping body to body up to now. But if you're going to put them in these beds, even if you make them triple bunk beds, you're not going to fit them all in. I said, Lord, what do I do about these 2 dormitories we've built? And the Lord spoke as clear as clear. He said, I have not designed my children to grow up in institutions, but in family units. Foster each orphan out, 1 per Christian family. Okay, Lord. I went to the main pastor and I brought this to him. That'll never work. He said, look, God's told me. Are you prepared to do it just for 6 months and see what happens? If it doesn't work, we'll have to go back to the dormitories. So he says, all right, we'll do it for 6 months. So each orphan there was fostered into a different Christian family. And we changed those 2 dormitories into a primary school for those orphans as well as the host family. So instead of building bunk beds with the wood we bought, we built tables and chairs for them to sit on. And it worked wonderfully. And this went on, and we then did more orphanages this way, God's way, by getting the orphans off the rubbish dumps, fostering them into Christian families, and building a school for the children and their host families, which in turn, they needed food. Well, everyone's got land in Africa, especially in the villages where I was working. So we taught them organic gardening, and where necessary, we sank a well for them that they could draw clean, fresh water for all the children and the families in the village, as well as irrigating the crops. When I went back the following year, I saw something amazing. These villages were no longer in poverty. And the school had become the center of the entire village community, because it was the children's school Mondays to Fridays. On Saturdays, they ran our Bible school of evangelism to everyone that wanted to come. And on Sundays, it was a church. And so these buildings were used every day of the week. And entire villages were transformed to living out the Christian life in practical ways. And we've just worked outwards and outwards in the different countries. And then a few years ago, the Lord said, now I want you to do this over radio. And I found myself on radio to a country called Sierra Leone. I've never ever been to Sierra Leone. And the year before last, we did the same pattern of getting the orphans, fostering them into the Christian families, building a school, sinking a well, and teaching them how to farm God's way. And then a year ago, we ran a crusade in a town, and 500 people received Jesus as Lord in that town. And the chief was so impressed that he gave us some land for a school. So we built the school and brought in the orphans into the school, fostered them into the new Christian families. The new Christians were baptized, and the school was opened a couple of months ago. It's quite new, and we've just sank our first well in that town. And we're also doing organic gardening. It's right on the edge of the town. And to my joy, the church, the children's school, has become the center of the whole town. And suddenly I learnt that God was showing me something very, very valuable. Only Jesus has the answer to every problem of the world. The church has authority to change the course of history. I don't know why the church has become so complacent, but right now the countries are turning their backs on God. Why can the church in England not use a similar plan as what God gave me for those orphans? If the churches were to wake up and know that their obedience is from God alone, God will give each church the strategy to reach out to their neighborhoods, villages, towns around us. There will be such an awakening. And once the Christians have awakened to a new life of obedience in Christ and obeying Him and doing His will, this whole country and the countries of the world can be brought back to Christ. Awaken, church. Awaken. Jesus is alive. Get into His presence. Hear His voice. Obey Him. And the job will get done. God bless you.